Nathan, I've already told you, don't trust her so blindly. Think carefully before you sell this house. This is the only home Mom and Dad spent their whole lives working to buy. Daniel kept trying to persuade his older brother to calm down and think things through before making such a reckless decision. But the more he tried to reason with him, the angrier Nathan became. In his mind, there was only one explanation. Daniel was trying to come between him and Camille. What the hell do you know? Worry about your own wife and stay out of my business. Better yet, get out. Daniel finally lost his patience. This is Mom and Dad's house. What gives you the right to talk like that? Nathan slammed his hand onto the table and pointed at him. Get out before I lose my temper. Laura heard the shouting from her room and hurried outside to stop the argument. Nathan didn't calm down. Instead, he turned on her as well. You're my mother. If you're not going to support me, then fine. If you want to leave, then leave. Laura was truly heartbroken, but she didn't cry. She quietly returned to her room, packed her belongings, and later that night left the house with Daniel. From that moment on, the bond between Laura and Nathan was almost completely broken. Laura had finished her meal with her children and was walking around her home. She looked over the house and the yard one more time before stopping on the porch. She stood there looking out at the spacious yard where the fruit trees spread their branches and provided plenty of shade. The sight made her feel peaceful and at ease. Mom, come inside and have some fruit, Camille called from inside the house. I'm coming, Laura replied. She went back inside and sat down on the wooden couch. Here, Mom, have some fruit, Camille said as she handed her a slice of mango. Just then, Daniel, Laura's younger son, walked in from the yard and sat beside her. Laura had not even finished the mango when Nathan and Camille exchanged looks from the couch across from her. A few seconds later, Nathan spoke hesitantly. Mom, Camille and I invited you here today because I wanted to ask you something. What is it? Laura asked. Well, we need some money for a business venture. Nathan stopped there. Seeing that her son seemed troubled, Laura assumed he wanted to borrow money. Are you having financial problems? If there's something wrong, just tell me. If I can help, I will. Camille and I need money, Mom. That's why I wanted to ask if you'd let us sell this property. Laura nearly dropped the teacup in her hand. What did you say? You want to sell this property? Yes. Property values are rising, and someone wants to buy this land to build a restaurant. They're offering a very good price. I want to sell it and use the money for business. Money makes more money, Mom. Laura was already shocked by the idea of selling the property, and hearing that made her even more upset. How can you say that? Property may not create more property, but as long as you have property, you still have something. Once it's gone, it's gone. Do you understand that? This property and this house are the result of a lifetime of hard work by your father and me. We wanted to leave something behind for our children and grandchildren. So why are you talking about selling it? It's still just property, Mom. Right now it's worth a lot because the buyer needs it. If we sell now, we'll get much more money than we normally would. Laura disagreed completely. This property is the only thing your father and I are leaving behind. Before he passed away, your father said it should never be sold, so I will not allow it. If you need money, you can use the property to get a bank loan, but you are not selling it. Laura firmly refused to let Nathan sell the property. She told him that if he needed money for business, she could ask Daniel to help him or he could borrow from the bank, but selling the property was out of the question. Camille looked alarmed when she heard her mother-in-law refuse. But Mom, Nathan already accepted a deposit from the buyer. If we don't sell now, we'll have to pay back 3 times the deposit. What? A deposit? Laura stared at her. Yes, $15,000. $15,000? And 3 times that if you cancel? Nathan, what are you doing? How could you accept a deposit before getting my approval? Where are you going to find the money to pay them back? Laura could hardly believe what Camille had just told her. Her hands shook as she gripped the armrest. She was still alive. The property was still hers. How could her son do something like this without even asking her? Did he understand what this property meant to her and her late husband? They had started with nothing. They worked day and night to buy this land. When they first bought it, it was little more than rough ground. They spent years improving it and turning it into what it was today. Then there was the house. Even when money was tight, They borrowed more because they wanted a spacious home where their children and future grandchildren could live comfortably. In recent years, land values had risen quickly. Many people had tried to buy the property, especially after new development projects came to the area, but Laura and her husband had always refused. Before he died, her husband intended to leave the property to Nathan because he was the oldest son. They believed he would take care of it and carry the family responsibility. Daniel had received financial help when he bought his own place elsewhere, so they always tried to be fair to both sons. Yet today, Nathan wanted to sell everything. Laura did not know whether he truly failed to understand or simply chose not to. Nathan had already taken the buyer's money. If she refused to sell, where would he find the money to repay it? But if she agreed, the property, the house, and the trees outside would all be destroyed. She would have nowhere left to return to. She sat silently as tears rolled down her face. This property was a part of her and her husband. They had protected it for their children, yet now her own son wanted to sell it. No, she would never allow it. Even if it cost her everything, she would protect it. After sitting there for a long time, Laura stood up and asked Daniel to help her back to her room. Nathan did not say anything else. He got up and walked into the yard. Camille was the only one still standing there, frustrated. You should have finished the conversation properly. You keep going back and forth. If she's not going to agree, then that's it. You're such an idiot. Camille muttered angrily before hurrying after her husband. She pulled Nathan aside and said something to him. After hearing her out, Nathan nodded in agreement. Later that evening, after thinking everything through, Laura asked Daniel to call Nathan and Camille upstairs because she wanted to talk to them. As soon as everyone sat down, Laura let out a long sigh before speaking. This property is the only thing your father and I are leaving behind for you. I don't understand why you're so determined to sell it. You accepted a deposit without my approval, and that was your mistake. You'll have to figure out how to deal with that yourself. But I will not allow this property to be sold. I've already spoken to Daniel. You can discuss with him how to handle the penalty. Nathan and Camille immediately looked unhappy. Camille seemed even more impatient than her husband. She stood up and raised her voice. How can you say that, Mom? You're pushing us into a corner. Parents should think about their children too. Daniel could not stay silent any longer. That's enough, Camille. You're a daughter-in-law. How can you talk to Mom like that? Nobody pushed you into a corner. You and Nathan did this yourselves. You took money from people before getting Mom's permission. Who are you blaming now? Camille turned toward him angrily. This doesn't concern you. Stop sticking your nose into our business. Daniel became even more upset. He stood up and pointed at her. Who are you saying doesn't belong here? You're the one who doesn't belong in this discussion. This property belongs to my parents. What gives you the right to demand that it be sold? Do you think I don't know what's going on? You're the one who talked my brother into this. He's never acted like this before. I can't believe you're being this unreasonable, Camille shot back. You're blaming everything on me. I've done my best for this family all these years, and yet you and Mom still treat me like an outsider. You're saying I forced Nathan to sell the property? He's a grown man, not a child. Nobody can force him to do anything. Then she turned to Nathan. And you? Are you just going to sit there while they talk about me like this? Nathan remained silent. Camille became even more upset. She shoved his shoulder and stood up. Fine. If that's how it is, then this family can deal with its own problems. Why should I care? Imagine having to ask someone else's permission before selling your own property. Cowards. She stormed out in tears. Nathan immediately got up and chased after her. Camille, where are you going? You deal with it yourself. This is your family, not mine. Nathan could not convince her to come back. Frustrated, he returned and sat down heavily. Then he turned toward Laura. Happy now, Mom. You got what you wanted. My family is falling apart. You told me to handle this myself. How am I supposed to do that? Where am I going to find $45,000 to pay them back? Laura's patience finally ran out. How you're going to handle it is your problem. Did I tell you to take their money? Did I tell you to sign anything? Nathan clenched his jaw. But this property belongs to me. Dad left it to me in his will. What right do you have to stop me from selling it? What did you just say? Laura stared at him. Mom, look at this. Dad left the property to me. The will was signed and legally witnessed. I respected you enough to ask first, but whether I sell it or not is my decision. Laura snatched the document from his hand and tore it in half. Nathan gave a cold smile. Go ahead and tear it up. I made plenty of copies. You ungrateful boy, Laura shouted. I'm still alive. You don't have the right to sell this property. Anyone who wants this land will have to step over my dead body first. The anger and heartbreak were too much for her. Before she could say anything else, her knees gave out and she collapsed. Daniel rushed over and helped her into a chair. Then he turned toward Nathan. That's enough! How can you speak to Mom like that? She already said she won't allow you to sell the property. Nathan glared at him. This is my property. I'll do whatever I want with it. I need money to build a better life. I'm not going to stay poor forever. But this is the property Mom and Dad spent their lives building. Stop talking nonsense. Property is property. It doesn't matter where people remember the family. I'm selling it, and that's final. Anybody who tries to stop me can deal with the police, including you, so stay out of my business. After throwing those words at his brother, Nathan shoved past him and walked away. After Nathan left, Daniel sat down beside his mother. He gently took Laura's weathered hand in his and spoke in a quiet voice. Mom, let it go. Nathan already made up his mind. He accepted the deposit before talking to you. He planned all of this long ago. Asking for your permission today was just a formality. Even if you refuse now, he'll still find a way to sell it later. You can't spend the rest of your life trying to stop him. Laura lowered her head. I know, but this property means everything to your father and me. Daniel hesitated before speaking again. Mom, there's something else I'm worried about. What is it? I don't think Nathan wants to sell the property just for business. I think Camille may have something else going on. Laura looked up. What do you mean? I've heard people talking. They say Camille has been spending time with another man. I've even seen her with him myself. Laura stared at him. Why are you only telling me this now? At first, I thought it might be a relative, a friend, or someone she knew through work. I didn't want to accuse her of anything without proof. But lately, more and more people have been talking. When the same story keeps coming from different people, it makes me wonder. Laura's face grew serious. You need to tell your brother. He has to know what's happening. Daniel nodded. I will. Nathan trusts her too much. If she's hiding something from him, I'm afraid he'll be the one who gets hurt. Laura let out a heavy breath. Your brother has always been easy to trust people. If Camille is fooling him, things could end badly. That's what I'm worried about too. That night, Camille never came home. After dinner, Laura went to bed while Nathan and Daniel remained outside drinking tea. Daniel tried one more time to talk some sense into his brother. Nathan, you shouldn't rush into selling the property. Business is complicated. If you're not careful, you could lose everything. Nathan's expression darkened. You just don't want me to succeed, Daniel shook his head. That's not true. I'm worried because you've never spent much time in business. There are a lot of people out there who know how to take advantage of others. Nathan waved him off. Camille is smart. She knows what she's doing. She'll help me make the right decisions. Daniel remained silent for a moment before speaking again. There's something else. I've seen Camille with another man before. Nathan immediately looked annoyed. Not this again. I'm serious. You should pay more attention. Maybe it's nothing, but you should at least know about it. Nathan's voice grew sharper. Mom and you keep making up stories because you don't want us to sell the property. You're trying to turn me against my wife. Nobody's trying to do that. I'm just telling you what I've seen. I trust Camille. If she's meeting another man, it's probably because of business. She wouldn't betray me. Daniel looked at his brother and could only sigh. I've warned you. That's all I can do. Just keep your eyes open. Shut up. If you're so capable, go home and worry about your own wife instead of sticking your nose into my business, Nathan snapped. Daniel was not about to back down. This is Mom and Dad's house. What gives you the right to talk to me like that? Nathan leaned back in his chair, his face dark with anger. Are you blind? Dad left this house and property to me. It belongs to me now. Anyone who doesn't like it can leave. Daniel stood up. Watch your mouth. Who are you calling anyone? Mom is still alive, and you're talking as if everything already belongs to you. Nathan slammed his hand down. I don't care. This property is mine. Everybody should mind their own business. The argument grew louder and louder. Laura, who had been resting inside, heard the shouting and rushed out, afraid her sons were about to fight. But Nathan was too angry to think clearly anymore. He turned toward his mother. "And you can leave, too." Laura froze. For a few seconds, she simply looked at her son. Then she slowly turned around and walked back inside. Daniel stood there in shock. Laura went to her room and quietly packed her belongings. The pain in her chest was heavier than anything she had ever felt before. This was the son she had loved, raised, and sacrificed for all her life. Yet now he was telling her to leave her own home. The property no longer mattered. The house no longer mattered. If she could no longer hold on to her son, what was the point of holding on to the property? Nathan was determined to sell it. He had already taken the buyer's money and made up his mind. Laura finally understood that no matter how hard she tried, she could not spend the rest of her life standing in his way. She carried her bag outside and walked toward Daniel. "Mom," Daniel said softly. Laura forced a weak smile. "Let's go." Daniel picked up her belongings and helped her toward his vehicle. Laura did not look back. She had spent years protecting the property for her children, but now she no longer had the strength to keep fighting. If Nathan insisted on selling it, then that would be his choice. She could only swallow her pain and let go. That same night, Laura moved into Daniel's home. 1 week later, Nathan and Camille completed the paperwork to sell the property. The house and land were sold to Victor for $300,000. After the sale, Nathan and Camille moved into Elisa's house. During that time, Victor frequently met with Camille and Elisa behind closed doors to discuss their business plans. After they finished working out the details, Camille told her husband that she wanted to invest in building a restaurant with Victor. Nathan immediately agreed with his wife. According to the contract Victor prepared for them, Victor would contribute 60% of the capital, equivalent to $300,000. Nathan and Camille would contribute 30%, equivalent to $150,000, while Elisa would contribute 10%. Since Elisa did not have enough money, she borrowed $50,000 from Nathan and agreed to sign a promissory note using her house as collateral. Just like that, from the money Nathan received after selling the only property that Laura and her late husband had spent their lives building, he lent part of it to his mother-in-law and invested the remaining money into the restaurant project with Victor. According to Victor's plan, once the restaurant opened and began operating, the profits would be enormous. He claimed that within only 2 years they would recover their investment and begin making substantial returns. Nathan knew very little about business. He simply listened to Victor and Camille talk about future profits and nodded along. He believed that with his wife's intelligence and ability to handle things, they would become wealthy very quickly. In his mind, selling the property and investing the money had been the right decision. He was determined to prove his mother and younger brother wrong for trying to stop him. From the day Nathan partnered with Victor, Camille began changing. She spent more and more time with Victor and was often away from home. She paid much more attention to her appearance than before. Her hair was always carefully styled, her clothes were more fashionable, and she seemed to have somewhere to go almost every day. Nathan noticed these changes and began feeling suspicious. When he asked about it, Camille told him she was working with Victor to supervise the restaurant project. She said she could not leave everything to Victor because she needed to keep an eye on the construction herself. After hearing that explanation, Nathan stopped questioning her. From then on, he no longer complained or showed any frustration whenever Victor arrived in his car to pick Camille up and take her away. Meanwhile, Laura was devastated when she learned that Nathan had gone through with the sale of the property and invested all the money in a restaurant venture with a stranger. The shock caused her chronic vertigo to flare up again, and she had to be hospitalized. After about a week of treatment, her physical condition improved, but emotionally, she remained deeply affected. Most days, she sat quietly by herself, lost in thought. She rarely wanted to talk to anyone. One day, Daniel visited her at the hospital. From a distance, he saw his mother sitting alone in the courtyard. Every now and then, she bent down to pick up fallen yellow leaves scattered across the ground. Her eyes stared into the distance as if she were thinking about someone far away. Daniel knew she was thinking about his father and the home that had held so many memories of their family. Her husband was gone. The property was gone. The house had already been torn down by its new owner. She no longer had a place she could truly call home. 3 years earlier, when her husband became seriously ill, Laura had assumed the property would eventually belong to Nathan, so she agreed to have it left to him. After her husband's death, she moved in with Daniel for a while and planned to return home later. She had imagined spending the rest of her life there, tending her garden and keeping her husband's memory alive. She wanted to wake up every morning in the house she and her husband had built together. She wanted to care for the trees they had planted. She wanted to sit on the porch where they had spent countless evenings together. But none of that would ever happen now. Nathan had sold everything before she had the chance to go back. He had used the documents she trusted him with to make decisions about property that represented her entire life. George, Laura whispered softly, calling her late husband's name into the empty air. No one answered. She slowly lowered herself onto a stone bench. Tears rolled down her wrinkled cheeks that had aged from decades of sacrifice and worry for her children. Watching the yellow leaves drift to the ground, she felt that she had become just like them. Old, fragile, barely holding on. A gentle breeze could carry them away at any moment. Laura remained there for a long time until Daniel finally came over and helped her back inside. About a week later, she was discharged from the hospital and returned to Daniel's home. Throughout the time Laura was in the hospital, and even after she returned home, Nathan and Camille never came to visit her. They left all responsibility for her care to Daniel and his wife. There were times when Daniel became so frustrated that he called his brother and asked why he never came to see their mother. Nathan always had an excuse. He claimed he was busy with work and said that Laura was still angry with him. He insisted that if he showed up, seeing him would only upset her and make her condition worse. Every time Daniel heard those excuses, all he could do was shake his head. He never imagined his older brother would become so indifferent and unfilial. What hurt him most was thinking about their mother. Ever since Nathan sold the property, Laura seemed lost. She often sat quietly by herself, staring into space. She blamed Nathan for what he had done, but she also worried about him constantly. Although she never admitted it out loud, she missed him terribly. Deep in her heart, she hoped that one day he would realize his mistake and come see her. A mother could never truly stop loving her child. No matter how much pain Nathan had caused her, Laura's heart remained open to him. She was still waiting for the day he would walk through the door and call her mom again. Daniel understood this better than anyone. There were only 2 sons in the family, but he always knew that Laura worried more about Nathan. Not because she loved Daniel less, but because she believed Nathan was too trusting and too easily influenced by others. She spent years trying to protect him and guide him. Daniel never felt jealous of that. In fact, he worried about his brother too. Nathan had always been kind-hearted. Unfortunately, he trusted Camille completely and followed whatever she suggested. Daniel had warned him many times to be careful and pay closer attention to Camille's behavior, but every conversation ended the same way. Nathan became angry, defended his wife, and accused Daniel of interfering in his marriage. Since the day Nathan sold the property, the 2 brothers rarely spoke to each other. Unless there was something important that needed to be discussed, they had almost no contact. Daniel no longer asked about Nathan's business, his finances, or his personal life. Eventually, the anniversary of their father's death arrived. Daniel called neither Nathan nor Camille. Even so, neither of them came. They completely ignored their own father's Memorial Day. Many times, Daniel looked at his mother and felt a sharp pain in his chest. Laura lived under his roof, but her thoughts seemed to follow Nathan wherever he went. Every day, she waited and hoped to see her eldest son again. 5 years passed. Time moved as quickly as the wind. The property Nathan once owned had been transformed into a large restaurant. Every day, Nathan, Camille, and Victor came and went, managing the business. The only problem was that very few customers came to eat there. Ever since the restaurant opened, Victor constantly told Nathan that the accountants were reporting losses month after month. Nathan knew very little about business, so he simply believed whatever Victor and Camille told him. About a year later, the restaurant finally seemed to attract a steady flow of customers. Nathan saw more and more people coming in to eat and felt hopeful. He thought the restaurant was finally making money and that he and Camille would soon be able to sit back and enjoy the rewards of their investment. But just as Nathan began to feel optimistic, the COVID-19 pandemic struck. The restaurant was forced to shut down for a long period of time. Business had already been struggling, and now things became even worse. Employee salaries and management expenses still had to be paid every month. Victor gave Nathan and Camille a monthly salary of $500 each. The money was barely enough for them to cover their daily expenses and support Elisa. After the pandemic ended, Victor told Nathan that the restaurant needed additional capital to continue operating and growing. The amount required was $30,000. Victor said they would each need to contribute $15,000. Nathan was shocked when he heard the number. He had no idea where he could get that kind of money. There was nothing left for him to sell. Seeing Nathan trapped with no options, Victor suggested using Elisa's house as collateral to secure a bank loan. When Elisa heard that her son-in-law wanted to mortgage her house, she strongly opposed the idea. But Nathan insisted that the house had already been pledged against the money she borrowed from him years earlier. He argued that he had every right to make the decision. He also reminded her that if the restaurant failed because of a lack of capital, she should not expect any profits since she was one of the investors. In the end, Elisa reluctantly agreed. Nathan used her house to secure a $15,000 bank loan and put the money into the restaurant. Business eventually returned to normal, although it took a long time for customer traffic to recover. Sometime later, Nathan noticed that the restaurant seemed to be doing very well. Customers came and went throughout the day, and the dining area was often busy. Yet despite that, Victor continued reporting losses every month. As a result, Nathan and Camille received nothing except their monthly salaries. They had not seen a single dollar in profit from their investment. Camille kept her own salary, while Nathan had to use his to cover food, household expenses, and other family costs. His monthly income was nowhere near enough. Sometimes it took him several months just to make one interest payment to the bank. On several occasions, the bank sent him notices warning that if he continued falling behind on the interest payments, they would begin recovery proceedings on the loan. Every time Nathan received one of those notices, he felt panic wash over him. He struggled just to pay the interest. How could he possibly repay the principal? The debt weighed heavily on his mind. He spent day after day worrying about where he could find money. No matter how much he thought about it, he could not come up with a solution. Then one day, Camille said, "Why don't you ask your mother for help? She has money." Nathan looked at her in surprise. "Mom is still angry with me because of the property." Camille shrugged. "Parents get angry, but they're still parents. No mother watches her child suffer without helping. If you're really in trouble, she'll help you." Nathan fell silent. What Camille said was not something he had never considered before. In fact, the thought had crossed his mind many times. Right now, Laura was probably the only person who could help him. The problem was that he had not visited her in 5 years. Not once. He was ashamed of what he had done. Ashamed to face his mother. Ashamed to face Daniel. Still, if he could not borrow money, he had no idea how he would survive. After thinking about it for several days, Nathan finally decided to swallow his pride. Late one afternoon, he went to Daniel's house to see his mother and ask for help. When Daniel called out that Nathan had come to visit, Laura hurried out from the kitchen. The moment she saw her eldest son standing there, her steps slowed. She stood still and looked at him. 5 years had passed since she had last seen him. He looked thinner and darker than before. For a brief moment, she felt happy to see him, but that feeling quickly gave way to the hurt she had carried for years. "Mom," Nathan called softly as he walked over and took her hand. He gently rubbed the wrinkled hand that had worked so hard to raise him. "How have you been? I'm sorry I haven't come to see you. I was afraid you were still angry with me." Laura looked at her son carefully. He had lost weight. The confident man who once believed he would become rich no longer seemed to be there. For years, she had imagined him living comfortably and enjoying the success he had chased after selling the property. Yet the man standing before her now looked tired and worn down. She had a feeling something was wrong, but she said nothing. Instead, she led him to a chair and asked about his life and business. Nathan lowered his head. "Things haven't gone well, Mom. Since the restaurant opened, we haven't made any profit. We've been losing money the whole time." Both Laura and Daniel stared at him in surprise. "Losing money?" Laura asked. "Yes. At first, we didn't have customers. Then when business started improving, the pandemic hit and everything shut down. Now things are open again, but we're still struggling. I even had to borrow money from the bank to keep the restaurant going, and we're still not making any profit." Daniel frowned. "If you've been losing money for that long, why do you keep pouring money into it?" Doesn't that tell you something is wrong? Nathan looked frustrated. I keep hoping things will get better. Hope isn't a business plan, Daniel replied. When something keeps losing money, you stop and figure out why. You don't keep throwing money into it. Laura raised her hand, signaling Daniel to calm down. Then she turned back to Nathan. So what are you planning to do now? Nathan hesitated before finally speaking. Mom, I came here today because I wanted to ask if you could lend me some money. Just enough to help me pay the bank interest for a few months. Once business improves, I'll pay you back. The moment Laura heard those words, her eyes became wet. Nathan was asking her to help him. Asking her to have mercy on him. Did he really think she had stopped loving him? If she didn't love him, would she have spent her entire life raising him, helping him build a family, and leaving him everything she and his father had worked for? Even after he sold the property against her wishes, she still worried about him every night. She prayed that his business would succeed and that he would live the happy life he wanted. For 5 years, she believed he had achieved that dream. Now he was sitting in front of her, burdened with debt and asking for help. Laura's heart ached for her son. But after a long silence, she slowly shook her head. Nathan, I'm old. I don't understand business. Selling the property and investing the money was already a huge risk. I tried to stop you, but you wouldn't listen. The losses you're facing now are the result of your own decisions. I can't lend you any money. Mom, please. I only need it for a few months. I'll pay you back. No, Mom. I said no. Nathan's face changed immediately. Why are you doing this to me? Are you really going to watch me suffer and do nothing? This isn't about money being more important than you, Laura replied quietly, but I can't keep solving your problems for you. Nathan pushed his chair back and stood up. Anger filled his face. Now I understand. You care more about your money than your own son. Nathan, you don't deserve to call yourself my mother. You see me drowning and refuse to help. I'll never forgive you for this. I hate you. I hate you. Nathan stormed out of the house after shouting those words at his mother. Daniel immediately lost his temper. He was ready to run after his brother and teach him a lesson for speaking to their mother that way, but Laura quickly stepped in and stopped him. Nathan walked away from Daniel's house as dusk settled over the neighborhood. Laura stood by the gate and watched her eldest son's figure gradually disappear into the distance. A deep sense of sorrow filled her heart. Her eyes turned red, and she felt a painful sting in her nose. She never imagined that the son she had carried, given birth to, and raised with so much love would one day speak to her with such bitterness and disrespect. Nathan used to be gentle and obedient. He was never particularly clever or ambitious, but he was kind-hearted and respectful. Now money had changed him. He no longer cared about her feelings. Laura felt overwhelmed by sadness. She wiped away the tears gathering in her eyes and continued staring until Nathan was completely out of sight. Only then did she slowly turn around and walk back into the house. Her steps felt unusually heavy. Seeing his mother so upset, Daniel tried to comfort her. Don't think about it anymore, Mom. Maybe this is what he needs. Maybe now he'll finally learn his lesson. Laura remained silent. She knew Daniel was still angry with his brother, which was why he spoke that way. The truth was that she was angry too. Never in her life had she imagined that the gentle son she once knew would become so reckless. Nathan had sold everything his parents had worked for and handed the money over to people he barely knew. Now the result of those choices was becoming painfully clear. As a mother, Laura felt torn apart inside. She felt sorry for her son, yet she also grieved for everything that had been lost. But no matter what Nathan had done, she could not feel happy seeing him suffer. No mother could. Laura wiped away the tears from the corners of her eyes and quietly went back into the house. She knew she would not be able to sleep that night. Her heart was filled with worry for her eldest son. At the restaurant owned by Victor and Nathan, today was the last day of the month and the business was preparing for its second quarter financial review. Victor arrived unusually early. He went straight into the accounting office, discussed something with the accountant, and then walked back out. As soon as he stepped into the lobby, he ran into Camille. Looking at the arrogant expression on her face, Victor frowned. Where are you going now? That's none of your business. How is it none of my business? Don't think I don't know what you've been doing behind my back. Whatever I'm doing has nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with me? After everything? Camille laughed coldly. Let's be honest, what we had was nothing more than a transaction. When the benefits ended, everything ended. That's all. Victor clenched his jaw. You really dare to treat me like this? Aren't you afraid I'll tell your husband everything? Tell him? Camille smirked. And what exactly would that do for either of us? Victor fell silent. That's what I thought, Camille continued. So keep your mouth shut. Things are better this way. Victor stood there staring at her. She was right. Even if Nathan found out about their affair, nothing would change. Camille wasn't afraid in the slightest. Ever since she learned Victor wasn't the true owner of the restaurant, but merely the manager acting on behalf of the real owner, her attitude toward him had completely changed. She had used Victor to get close to the real owner, and now she was involved with that man instead. If Victor upset her, she could easily complain to the owner and cost him his position. For now, all he could do was endure the humiliation and hope the owner would eventually lose interest in her. While Victor and Camille argued in the restaurant lobby, Nathan arrived. For a long time, he had suspected there was something inappropriate between his wife and Victor, but he never had proof. Seeing them arguing, he quietly hid behind a decorative plant and listened. The more he heard, the more shocked he became. His lips tightened, his teeth ground together, his breathing grew heavier. His hands curled into fists. Rage surged through him. For years, those two had fooled him, sneaking around behind his back while treating him like an idiot. Nathan almost kicked over the large plant in front of him. After taking a deep breath, he charged into the middle of the lobby. His eyes were blazing with anger. You too, he roared. You really dared to do this behind my back? Today I'm going to make both of you pay. Nathan rushed forward, grabbed Victor by the shirt, and punched him in the face. Victor fell to the floor. Blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. He wiped it away, jumped back to his feet, and threw a punch of his own. Nathan staggered backward. Victor pointed at him and shouted, You fool! You couldn't even keep your own wife. Who are you blaming now? And if you think that's bad, she's about to run off with an old man too. Why don't you go stop her? Nathan immediately looked toward the entrance and saw Camille heading outside. He ran after her. Camille, stop right there! I know everything now! Camille turned around. So you know? Good, good. What do you mean good? Why did you betray me? Camille shrugged. You already heard everything. I don't see any reason to explain myself. She looked him straight in the eye. And while we're being honest, I'm no longer interested in you. So don't waste your time trying to hold on to me. Nathan's face twisted with anger. You're a shameless woman. How could you do this to me? Camille laughed. Honestly, I should thank you. If you hadn't sold your property and invested in the restaurant, I never would have met the man I've always wanted. Shut your mouth, Nathan shouted. You're a snake. In front of me, you pretended to be a good wife, while behind my back, you were sleeping with a man old enough to be your father. Aren't you ashamed? Ashamed? Camille laughed again. Why would I be ashamed? He's old, but he's rich. What do you have besides an empty shell? She stepped closer and lowered her voice. If I were you, I'd keep quiet. You still depend on this business. If you make trouble, I can't guarantee what will happen next. She reached out and lightly touched his face as if mocking him. Nathan slapped her hand away. Get away from me. You're disgusting. At that moment, Elisa arrived. Seeing her daughter and son-in-law arguing, she immediately demanded to know what was happening. Nathan, already consumed by anger, told her everything. He accused Camille of cheating on him and sleeping with another man. Elisa's face darkened. Instead of believing him, she accused him of making things up and trying to ruin her daughter's reputation. Nathan exploded. He and Elisa began shouting at each other in the middle of the restaurant lobby. Employees gathered nearby, whispering and pointing as they watched the drama unfold. Fortunately, it was still early and there were no customers around, so the scene caused little damage to the business. Eventually, one of the employees stepped forward and tried to calm Nathan down. Mr. Nathan, whatever is going on, you shouldn't do this here. You're one of the managers. Nathan's face remained tense with anger. He breathed heavily but managed to control himself. Before leaving, he pointed at Camille and said, "This isn't over. I won't let this go." Then he turned and walked away while Camille and Elisa stood there in silence, painfully aware that everyone in the restaurant had witnessed the entire scene. The next morning, while Nathan was at home, he received a message from Victor informing him that a shareholders' meeting would be held that afternoon. Nathan found the announcement strange. Why would Victor suddenly call a shareholders' meeting? Was something wrong with the restaurant? As he was wondering about it, Elisa walked over and asked him the same question. She had apparently received the same notification. "Do you know why there's a shareholders' meeting this afternoon?" she asked. Nathan was still angry about the way Elisa had defended Camille the day before, so he answered coldly. No. Elisa ignored his attitude and continued speaking. "I wonder if Camille already knows about it. She didn't come home last night. I've called her several times, but she won't answer." Nathan simply shook his head and walked away. He had no interest in talking about Camille anymore. He thought to himself that the shares belonged to him, not to Camille, so whether she knew about the meeting or not had nothing to do with him. At around 2 o'clock that afternoon, Nathan arrived at the restaurant. Not long afterward, Elisa and Camille arrived together. When Camille saw Nathan, she didn't say a word. Nathan looked at her with obvious anger. Seeing the tension between them, Elisa quickly whispered to her daughter, "Now isn't the time to fight with him. Be a little nicer. When the profits are distributed, he'll still give you your share. If you push him too far and he cuts you off, we'll be the ones who lose out." Camille gave a dismissive smile. "Mom, don't worry. My name is on the shareholder documents too. Besides, tomorrow he may end up begging me." Camille walked away while Elisa hurried after her, shaking her head in frustration. Inside the restaurant's management office, Victor and the others gathered for the meeting. Nathan and Elisa waited nervously. Despite everything, they still hoped this would finally be the first profitable report after more than 5 years of operation. Camille showed little interest in the meeting. She sat holding her phone, occasionally sending messages and smiling to herself. Nathan noticed, but forced himself to ignore it. After about 5 minutes, Victor finished arranging his documents and announced the start of the meeting. He carefully presented financial records covering the restaurant's entire history, from construction through daily operations. He reviewed monthly revenue and expenses one by one. Finally, he reached his conclusion. Since the restaurant began operating, the total accumulated loss has reached $570,000. Nathan's eyes widened. His face immediately turned red with anger. Elisa sat frozen in disbelief. Victor continued calmly. "All of those losses have been covered by the restaurant owner. Based on the financial results, the investment contributed by Nathan and Elisa has been fully absorbed by those losses. Including the additional capital contributed last year, there is no remaining investment balance." The room fell silent. Nathan could barely believe what he was hearing. The money from selling the property was gone. Every dollar of it. Victor continued. "As for the $15,000 borrowed last year to keep the restaurant operating, there is still an outstanding balance. However, because of our long relationship, the owner has agreed to forgive that debt. Nathan will not be required to repay it." Then Victor looked directly at him. "Effective immediately, you no longer have any authority or management role in this restaurant." Nathan slammed his hand onto the table and jumped to his feet. "What kind of nonsense is that?" he shouted. "How can a business lose that much money? Every month you talked about losses, and now you're telling us it's over $500,000? Do you think we're fools?" Victor remained calm. "Please watch your words. Everything is supported by financial records." "Financial records?" Nathan shouted. "Where's the accountant? I want to speak to the accountant." "Fine," Victor replied. "I'll call him." A short time later, Vincent, the restaurant's accountant, entered the office. In front of everyone, he confirmed that the documents Victor presented were authentic and based on the restaurant's actual financial records. After answering a few questions, Vincent left the room. Victor stepped outside to answer a phone call, while Camille quietly slipped away without Nathan noticing. Soon only Nathan and Elisa remained inside the office. Both of them looked pale. The money was gone. The money from selling the property was gone. Elisa's mortgaged house was still tied to the bank loan. Elisa looked at Nathan with despair. "What are we going to do now?" Nathan clenched his fists. "What is there left to do?" Elisa became angry. "Don't take it out on me. When Victor was talking about huge profits, you were just as excited as the rest of us." Nathan snapped back. "And your daughter is the reason I'm in this mess." The two of them continued arguing back and forth until Victor became annoyed by the commotion. Finally, he called security and ordered them to remove Nathan and Elisa from the restaurant. Being thrown out of a restaurant in which he had once owned a share filled Nathan with rage. He shook the security guard's hand off his arm and stormed straight toward Victor's office without even knocking. He slammed the door open and charged inside. Pointing at Victor, he shouted, You're the one who cheated me! Today you either return my money or I'll call the police!" As he spoke, Nathan lunged forward, grabbed Victor's shirt, and tried to punch him. But Victor was ready for him. He quickly stepped aside, avoiding the punch, then fired one of his own. The blow caught Nathan off guard and sent him stumbling backward to the floor. Blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. Victor looked down at him and laughed mockingly. "Take a good look at yourself. You're skinny, worn out, and pathetic. I get tired just looking at you. Why do you think your wife left?" Nathan glared at him. Victor continued, "If I were you, I'd leave before I have someone drag you out. Business involves risk. Sometimes you win. Sometimes you lose. You lost. That's all there is to it. Everything was signed legally. Go ahead and call the police if you want. It won't change a thing." Nathan clenched his fists. "You set me up. You stole my money," Victor shrugged. "Prove it." Nathan had no answer. Every document had been signed. Every transaction had paperwork behind it. Even the accountant had confirmed the records. Victor grabbed Nathan by the shirt and pulled him toward the door. "Get out." Nathan was shoved from the office like a beggar. Humiliation burned inside him. The money was gone. The property was gone. Everything his parents had worked their entire lives to build had disappeared. And now he had nothing to show for it. As he walked away from the restaurant, anger and regret consumed him. Camille had encouraged him to sell the property. Camille had convinced him to invest. Now the money was gone, and she had abandoned him for another man. The more Nathan thought about it, the more convinced he became that Camille and Victor had planned everything from the beginning. They had tricked him into selling the property and investing the money so they could take it from him. Nathan rushed home, desperate to find someone to blame, but the house was empty. Camille was nowhere to be seen. Elisa had disappeared as well. Exhausted and furious, Nathan grabbed a bottle of liquor and dropped heavily into a chair. He drank one mouthful after another. The burning sensation in his throat felt strangely comforting. The more he drank, the less he thought about what had happened. Before long, he was drunk. Staggering into his room, he stopped in front of a mirror and stared at his reflection. His hair was a mess. His clothes were wrinkled. His face looked tired and defeated. He remembered Victor's words. Looking at himself in the mirror, he muttered, "A restaurant owner? You don't even look like an owner. You look like a homeless man." The reflection staring back at him seemed to confirm it. He had no money, no property, no wife, nothing. Nathan hated what he saw. He could not accept losing everything so easily. Yet he also knew he had no power, no influence, and no business knowledge to fight people like Victor. Deep down, he began to suspect that the financial records had been manipulated. No business could lose that much money and still remain open. For the first time, Nathan seriously questioned the story Victor had been telling for years. The accountant would know the truth. If anyone knew whether the restaurant had really lost money or whether the books had been altered, it would be Vincent. The next day, Nathan went to the restaurant looking for him. But when he arrived, the employees told him that Vincent had resigned on the very afternoon of the shareholders' meeting. Nobody knew where he had gone. Nathan left disappointed. Day after day, he remained trapped in misery. He had lost his money, lost his wife, lost his future. The more he thought about everything, the more ashamed he felt. Ashamed of what he had done to his mother. Ashamed of ignoring Daniel's warnings. If he had listened to them years ago, none of this would have happened. But now he could not bring himself to face Laura. He had sold her property and spoken cruelly to her. How could he look her in the eye again? Unable to find answers and unwilling to face reality, Nathan spent most of his days drinking. One day, Nathan was drunk again. He had been drinking since noon and could barely walk straight. As he stepped out of the house into the yard, he looked toward the gate and saw his shameless wife getting out of a car driven by an old man with a gray beard. Nathan sneered. He cursed under his breath while staring at her. After saying goodbye to her lover, Camille walked toward the house carrying her handbag. When she saw Nathan, she acted as if he didn't exist and continued walking. Nathan became furious. In a slurred voice, he shouted, "You shameless woman! Can't you see I'm sitting here?" Camille knew he was drunk and didn't respond. Nathan took a few steps forward and grabbed her by the hair. "Are you blind? Can't you see me?" Camille pushed his hand away and shouted, "You useless drunk! Get out of my house! I'm sick of seeing your face." Nathan's eyes widened with anger. "You dare look down on me?" Camille replied, "Look down on you? You brought this on yourself. Don't blame me." Nathan pointed at her and shouted, "You tricked me. You told me to sell the property and invest the money. Now I've lost everything, and you turn your back on me." Camille crossed her arms. "Who tricked you? You were the one stupid enough to do it. Plenty of people know better than to sell family property. If you got cheated, that's because you were too foolish." Nathan's face twisted with rage. "You shameless woman! You still dare call me a fool? That's exactly what you are. You were too incompetent to manage a restaurant, so of course you got cheated. Stop blaming other people for your own stupidity." Nathan was already drunk and furious. Hearing those words pushed him over the edge. He grabbed the liquor bottle beside him and rushed toward Camille. "You think I'm a fool?" He swung the bottle and struck her on the head. The bottle shattered. Camille collapsed to the ground as blood ran down her face. Nathan looked at her lying there but didn't care. He gave a bitter laugh and walked back into the house. A few minutes later, Elisa returned home. She found Camille unconscious and rushed her to the hospital. Fortunately, she received treatment in time and was not in serious danger. After 2 days in the hospital, she was discharged and returned home. From the day Camille was admitted to the hospital until the day she came home, Nathan never once visited her. 2 months later, Nathan and Camille officially divorced. They had no children and no property left to divide, so the divorce process was simple. Camille was delighted to be free of Nathan. She looked forward to the life she believed her wealthy older lover could give her. Nathan, on the other hand, felt a heavy weight in his chest. He wasn't happy that the marriage was over. He wasn't relieved to be rid of an unfaithful wife. The only thing he felt was pain. He still loved Camille. That was why her betrayal hurt so much. At times, when he was sober, Nathan even thought that he should have stabbed her instead of hitting her with a bottle that day. If she had died, perhaps he would not have to suffer every time he saw her or thought about her. If he ended up in prison, so be it. Sometimes he felt prison might be better than the life he was living now. At least there, he would not have to face a world full of deception and disappointment. After leaving Elisa's house, Nathan drifted from one construction site to another, taking whatever labor jobs he could find. At night, he often slept there as well. The bank loan remained unpaid, but he no longer worried much about it. The debt was secured by Elisa's house. If the bank eventually seized the property, then so be it. In Nathan's mind, that would simply be the price Elisa had to pay for raising a daughter who had deceived him. News of Nathan losing all the money from the property and divorcing Camille eventually reached Laura. She felt sorry for her son, but she was still angry with him as well. She said this was the price he had to pay for being reckless and trusting the wrong people. Even so, when she first heard what had happened, she was devastated. Her hands trembled and her whole body felt weak. The money that she and her late husband had spent a lifetime building was gone. Everything had vanished because of her son's choices. "You brought this on yourself, son," Laura said through tears. But no one knew that after learning what had happened, the person who suffered the most was Laura herself. She grieved for the money that was gone, but she grieved even more for Nathan. Many nights she lay awake, thinking that if she and her husband had never transferred the property to Nathan, perhaps neither of them would be living with such regret today. Now the property was gone, and Nathan was wandering from place to place with no real home. The thought of it broke her heart. After many sleepless nights of thinking, Laura finally made a decision. She told Daniel to bring Nathan home. She could not bear the thought of her son struggling alone with no wife, no family, and nobody to care for him. If he kept drinking and living that way, she feared he would eventually become seriously ill or drink himself to death. Daniel loved both his mother and his brother, so he agreed to bring Nathan back. When Nathan returned, he broke down in tears and apologized to his mother. Seeing how thin he had become and how much his spirit had deteriorated, Laura felt nothing but sympathy for him. She comforted him gently. Money can be lost, but as long as people are still here, everything can be rebuilt. I'm not angry with you anymore. You need to pull yourself together and start over. Nathan buried his face against his mother's chest and cried like a child. Mom, I'm sorry. Laura stroked his head. Her eyes were filled with sadness. You were too trusting, son. That's why people took advantage of you. But what's done is done. Don't keep torturing yourself over it. Stay here with me and your brother. We'll get through this together. I'll ask Daniel to help you find a job. Yes, Mom, Nathan nodded. But when he thought about the property, tears came again. I still can't accept it, Mom. The property, our property. His voice broke. He truly could not accept being deceived so completely. That night, Nathan sat down with Daniel and told him everything that had happened. After listening carefully, Daniel shared many of the same suspicions. Together, they decided to file a report with the police and ask for an investigation. Not long after that, the police opened an investigation. However, by that time, Victor and Vincent had already disappeared. The restaurant had also been sold and transferred to new owners. The money had been taken overseas. Because the suspects had fled the country, the police had no choice but to suspend the investigation until new information about Victor and Vincent became available. When Nathan heard this, he understood what it meant. The money that had been taken from him was gone. The people responsible had escaped. The chances of recovering anything were almost non-existent. Nathan fell into a deep depression for a long time afterward. Eventually, Daniel helped him get a job as a security guard at a company not far from home. Every day, Nathan went to work and returned home in the evening. He lived with Daniel, Laura, and Angela. In the past, Angela had never involved herself in the conflict between Nathan and the rest of the family. She believed it was not her place. But after learning that Nathan had been deceived and had lost everything, she felt sorry for him. She welcomed her brother-in-law into the home and treated him kindly. Nathan did not eat much, spent most of his day at work, and rarely caused any trouble. As a result, everyone got along peacefully. Laura was happy to see that Nathan had finally begun recovering from the shock of losing everything. Every day she encouraged him and hoped he would learn from his mistakes. She wanted him to become stronger and wiser after everything he had been through. Little by little, Nathan's life became stable again. He lived peacefully with his brother's family and gradually returned to a normal routine. As Nathan's life gradually became stable again, Camille's life moved in the opposite direction. After leaving Nathan, she was thrilled because her older lover gave her money to redeem her mother's house. She believed she was finally about to enjoy the wealthy life she had always wanted. But only a few months later, the man abandoned her and began seeing a younger and more attractive woman. Camille was furious, but there was nothing she could do. By then, Elisa's house had already been taken by the bank. Mother and daughter were forced to rent a small room to live in. Before convincing Nathan to sell the property, Camille had worked as a factory worker at a plastic bag manufacturing facility. After Nathan invested in the restaurant, she quit her job and became involved in managing the business with him. She thought Victor was wealthy and began seeing him because she hoped for a comfortable life without having to work hard. The money Victor gave her was quickly spent on entertainment, shopping, and beauty treatments. Later, when she discovered that Victor was not actually rich and was only working for the real owner, she began using him to get close to that owner instead. With her ability to charm men, she quickly became involved with Victor's boss as well. But Camille never expected that she had chosen the wrong target. The restaurant owner was far more cunning than she realized. He made promises to her and kept her close until he eventually grew tired of her. Then he threw her aside without giving her a single dollar. Her plan to secure a wealthy man had completely failed. Now she was left with nothing. No husband, no home, no future. Ashamed and embarrassed, Camille could barely face anyone. In the end, she had no choice but to return to factory work to support herself and her mother. After learning that Nathan's life had become stable again, Camille felt a great deal of regret. She often thought that if she had not been so greedy and obsessed with money, if she had not pressured her husband into selling the property to invest in business, their lives would not have turned out this way. The more she regretted her choices, the more she thought about Nathan. She imagined him living alone with nobody beside him. Eventually, she asked someone to quietly pass a message to him that she wanted to reconnect. Nathan listened but said nothing. A few days later, Camille went to Nathan's workplace to see him in person. Nathan was surprised when he saw her. By then, he no longer hated her as intensely as he once had. He believed that what had happened was not entirely her fault. He blamed himself as well. He had been weak and indecisive. He had followed his wife's advice without understanding business. He had recklessly sold his parents' property to invest. After the restaurant opened, he handed over most of the management responsibilities to Victor and trusted him completely. That trust allowed Victor to deceive him for years without him noticing. By the time he realized what had happened, it was too late. Nathan knew he had been a fool. The two of them sat together at a small cafe near his workplace. Nathan remained quiet for most of the conversation. Camille spoke awkwardly, trying to keep the conversation going. The real reason she came was to see whether Nathan still had feelings for her. If he did, she wanted to suggest that they get back together. But after meeting him, she could feel how distant and indifferent he had become. Embarrassed, she finished her drink, exchanged a few polite words, and left. Nathan soon returned to work. It seemed that he no longer had any feelings for Camille. For some reason, Laura learned about Camille's visit the very next day. When she heard about it, she became upset. That evening, when Nathan came home from work, she spoke to him immediately. "I'm telling you right now, don't get involved with Camille again. Once it's over, let it stay over. A woman like that can't be trusted." Nathan shook his head. "Mom, we just happened to meet. There's nothing going on between us." "Just happened to meet?" Laura replied. "People told me she wants to get back together with you. That's why I'm warning you. A woman's heart is hard to understand. She deceived you once and ran off with another man. Nobody can guarantee she won't do the same thing again. It's better to end it completely." "Yes, Mom," Nathan answered quietly. Then he went into his room to rest. He knew his mother was only worried about him. Laura understood something Nathan never admitted out loud. His feelings for Camille had never completely disappeared. The divorce had happened because Camille insisted on leaving him. If, back then, she had admitted her mistakes, asked for forgiveness, and promised to change, Nathan would probably have forgiven her. During the 2 years after the divorce, Laura introduced him to several women, hoping he would move on and build a new life. Nathan never accepted any of those introductions. It wasn't because he looked down on the women his mother introduced. The truth was much simpler. His heart still belonged to Camille. Nathan knew his mother was right to worry. He also knew she still hated what Camille had done to him. But Laura did not know that Nathan had already heard about Camille's life after the divorce. He knew the older man had left her. He knew she was no longer living the comfortable life she once dreamed of. He also knew she wanted to come back to him. Even so, he still could not forgive her. The betrayal, the lies, and the pain she had caused were not things he could simply forget. Yet no matter how much he tried to deny it, his feelings for her had never completely disappeared. That was why, even after 2 years, he still had not accepted any of the women his mother introduced to him. It was not because he disliked them or looked down on them. The truth was that Camille still occupied a place in his heart. He loved her, but he also resented her. When she appeared before him again, he chose to act indifferent. He ignored the feelings he still carried and kept his distance from her. But life often moves according to its own course. People meet, separate, and meet again because of fate. And perhaps the story between Nathan and Camille was no different. 3 months passed after Camille's visit to Nathan. Then Nathan was involved in an accident and broke his leg. He could no longer walk. Daniel was busy with work all day, and Laura was too old to take care of him. When Camille heard about the accident, she immediately came to see him. Looking at the concern on her face, Laura could tell that Camille regretted what she had done and wanted to return to Nathan. Even so, Laura had no intention of approving their relationship. Knowing that Nathan had no one to care for him, Camille spoke with Laura and offered to stay and look after him. Laura hesitated, but there were few alternatives. It wasn't that she wanted to take advantage of Camille, but in the current situation, she accepted because Camille was volunteering. From that day on, Camille stayed by Nathan's side. Even after he was discharged from the hospital, his leg had not fully healed, so she continued taking care of him at home. While Daniel and Angela were at work, Camille stayed home cleaning the house, preparing meals, and helping Nathan with daily tasks. After about a month, Nathan's leg recovered and he was able to walk again. By then, the relationship between them had become much closer. One day, Camille told him that she wanted them to get back together. Nathan remained silent. He looked thoughtfully at the face in front of him, a face marked by years of hardship. This was the woman he had once loved deeply, the woman he had wanted to spend the rest of his life with. He had never been a particularly successful man, but he had always tried to give her a decent life. What he never expected was that when circumstances changed, her feelings would change as well. She saw men who appeared wealthier and more successful than him and quickly left him behind. She never understood how much that had hurt him. Now she had been abandoned and wanted to return. Nathan still loved her, but his love was no longer what it once had been. Alongside that, love were resentment and doubt. He no longer trusted her completely. He could not stop wondering whether she would leave him again if another man with more money appeared in her life. Nathan never spoke those thoughts aloud. He simply allowed Camille to remain beside him. Day after day, her care and warmth slowly reached him. Little by little, his heart began to respond again. In the end, Nathan decided to let Camille return to him. They would live together again. He knew it was a risky decision. He had no way of knowing whether she would betray him again in the future. Even so, he chose to trust his heart one more time. Either they would spend the rest of their lives together, or she would hurt him again. And if that happened, he felt certain his heart would never recover. After deciding to take Camille back, Nathan told his mother about it. The moment Laura heard the news, she strongly objected. But Nathan kept pleading with her. He told her that if she refused to accept Camille, then he would never marry anyone else. Nathan also asked Daniel to help persuade their mother. Daniel had always gotten along well with Camille before she betrayed his brother. The only reason he had come to dislike her was because of what she had done to Nathan. Over the past months, however, he had spent more time around her and felt that she had genuinely changed. He eventually spoke to Laura. "Just let them be together, Mom. Nathan can't spend the rest of his life alone." Laura sighed. "I know that. I'm just afraid she'll hurt him again." "I don't think so." She's over 40 now. After everything that's happened, she should have learned her lesson. Laura sat quietly for a moment before nodding. "All right, I'll listen to you." In the end, Laura agreed to let Nathan and Camille get back together. They did not hold a wedding ceremony. They simply went to the county office, registered their marriage again, and returned home to live together. Ever since Camille came back, Nathan seemed much happier. He smiled more often and laughed more often. Seeing that change in her son brought Laura a great deal of comfort. She believed that if both Nathan and Camille truly understood the mistakes they had made and treated them as lessons they would never repeat, then perhaps something good had come from all their suffering. Laura was getting old. She did not know how much time she had left. If her time came, she wanted to leave this world knowing Nathan's life was settled. Money could always be earned again. People mattered more. As long as her children were happy, she felt the losses they had suffered had not been entirely meaningless. Everyone in Laura's family was happy that Nathan and Camille were back together, but there was one problem. When Nathan was single, staying with Daniel's family was not a big issue. Now that he had a wife again, things were different. A married couple could not stay in someone else's home forever. Living together for too long could easily lead to misunderstandings and conflicts. Laura understood that. She gathered Daniel and Nathan and told them she had saved $15,000 over the years. Since Nathan had no place of his own, she wanted to give him that money. She also hoped Daniel could lend him additional money so he could buy a small piece of land and move out. Daniel immediately agreed. However, when he discussed the matter with Angela, she strongly disagreed. The family property was already given to them, Angela said. They sold it. If they want land now, they should pay for it themselves. Why should Mom's money go to them? Daniel sighed. Where are they supposed to get that kind of money? I don't know. But Mom lives with us. Her money should belong to her and be used carefully. Nathan is having a hard time. They're family. We should help. Angela frowned. Help? For 2 years he's lived here and I've never asked him for a penny for food or expenses. How is that not helping? I'm not being selfish. I'm talking about what's fair. The discussion continued. Daniel tried to persuade her, but Angela refused to change her mind. Finally, after many days of talking, she came up with another solution. She agreed to give Nathan and Camille a portion of their own land to build a house on. The value of the land would be $35,000. Laura would contribute $15,000 immediately. The remaining $20,000 would be considered a debt. Nathan and Camille would repay $4,000 per year over 5 years. Once the debt was fully paid, Daniel and Angela would officially transfer ownership of the land. If Nathan wanted to buy land somewhere else, however, Angela would not lend him any money. Daniel felt the proposal was reasonable and agreed. A family meeting was held. Laura, Nathan, and Camille all accepted the arrangement. Nathan believed that, considering his situation, his brother and sister-in-law were already helping him a great deal. He and Camille would work hard and repay the debt little by little. After the agreement was finalized, Laura immediately handed over her $15,000 to Angela. The following day, she began looking for an appropriate date to start construction. Nathan did not have much money, so he planned to build only a small house for the time being. In the future, when finances improved, he could always build a larger one. For now, all he and Camille needed was a place of their own. They would focus on paying back the land debt first and worry about everything else later. After Nathan and Camille moved into their own home, Laura moved in with them as well. She wanted to help with cooking and household chores. Nathan continued working as a security guard, while Camille returned to factory work. The jobs were tiring and the pay was not very high. 3 months after getting back together, Camille became pregnant. 9 months later, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Everyone in Laura's family was delighted. Having a child brought a lot of happiness to Nathan and Camille, but it also made their financial situation more difficult. Nathan had little education and could only find work as a security guard. Camille's factory wages were just enough to cover daily expenses. After paying for food, utilities, and other household needs, there was very little left. They still owed money for the land and wanted to repay the debt as quickly as possible. When their son turned 2 years old, Camille brought up an idea. "How about I leave our son here with Mom and you for a while and go to Atlanta to work?" she asked. "If I can earn more money, we can pay off the debt faster." Nathan frowned. "What would you do there?" "A friend of mine owns a clothing store. She told me I could work for her. The pay is better than what I make here. During holidays and busy seasons, I can earn even more." Nathan sighed. He understood what she was saying. Their current income was not enough if they wanted to improve their lives. But he could not hide his concern. The thought of Camille leaving for the city made him uneasy. He was afraid that history might repeat itself. He was afraid she might once again be drawn to a life filled with money and temptation. Camille understood exactly what was going through his mind. She repeatedly reassured him. "You don't need to worry. You're the only man I have now. Everything I'm doing is for you and our son. We need to think about the future. We still owe money for the land, and we can't raise our son forever in this small house." Nathan listened quietly. He knew she was right. They could not continue living this way forever. Even so, the decision was not easy for him. Over the following days, Camille continued trying to convince him. Eventually, Nathan agreed to let her go. Laura was unhappy about the idea at first, but after listening to both of them explain their reasons, she reluctantly gave her approval as well. After Camille moved to the city to work at her friend's clothing store, she earned about $1,000 a month. When she received her first paycheck, she sent $700 home to Nathan. In the months that followed, she continued doing the same thing. Month after month, Camille regularly sent him $700. Every time Nathan received the money, he felt encouraged. If things continued like this, he and Camille would be able to pay off their debt to Daniel much sooner. Nathan decided that he would use only his own salary for daily expenses and for their son's needs. The money Camille sent home would remain untouched so he could save it and use it to repay the debt. Time passed quickly. Before they realized it, Camille had already been in the city for nearly a year. Every month, she continued sending money home without fail. She sent money regularly, but she rarely came home to visit. Most of the time, she only called and talked to the family over the phone. She always said she was too busy to return. Nathan accepted her explanation without suspicion. Then one day, while carrying his son to a neighbor's house, the neighbor casually asked him, "Does your wife make good money working in the city?" Nathan nodded. "About $1,000 a month, I think. She sends me $700 every month." The woman looked surprised. "If she sends you that much, what does she spend on herself? Does she have another source of income?" The question caught Nathan off guard. He answered politely and left with his son. On the way home, however, he kept thinking about what she had said. Was Camille really spending almost nothing on herself? Or was there something she had not told him? That night, Nathan called her. After asking about her health, he carefully brought up the subject. "Why don't you keep more money for yourself? You send me almost everything every month. You have expenses too," Camille answered immediately. "I hardly spend anything." My friend provides my meals and a place to stay. I don't really need much money. I only keep a couple $100s for my phone bill and medicine if I get sick. You don't need to worry about me." After hanging up, Nathan felt a sting in his nose. He had misunderstood her. She wasn't hiding anything from him. She was thinking about her husband and child, about their family. The woman who once cared so much about expensive clothes and luxury items now seemed to care only about her family. After turning off his phone and lying down, Nathan could not fall asleep. He kept tossing and turning in bed. The more he thought about his wife, the more grateful he felt, and the more disappointed he felt in himself. He silently promised that from now on he would trust her completely and appreciate her and appreciate every dollar she worked so hard to earn. Several months passed. Camille continued working in the city and continued sending money home every month. But one day, after receiving a bank notification, Nathan froze. The amount Camille had sent that month was no longer $700. This time, she had sent $1,200. Staring at the number on his phone, Nathan muttered to himself, "Why did she send so much this month?" Curious about the money, he immediately called her. "Camille, why did you send so much money this month?" Hearing the surprise in his voice, Camille laughed. "My friend thinks I'm hardworking and dependable, so she gave me a raise." "Really? Of course! What, you don't believe me? If you don't want the extra money, I'll go back to sending the old amount next month." No, I believe you." Nathan hung up without the slightest suspicion. Ever since Camille moved to the city, he had been making payments to Daniel every 3 months. By now, he and Camille had already repaid more than half of what they owed for the land. Now that Camille was earning more money, he felt confident they would be debt-free soon. Thinking about that made him feel hopeful. After everything they had been through, he never imagined life would improve like this. Sometimes people only realize the value of something after losing it. Nathan felt that way about his family. It took losing Camille for him to understand how precious a family truly was. It took losing all of his money to understand the value of every hard-earned dollar. He promised himself that he would treasure his wife even more from now on. He believed Camille felt the same way. Surely she understood now how much pain she had caused him in the past, and that was why she was working so hard to make up for it. Several more months passed. Life continued peacefully, filled with hope for a brighter future. But lately, Nathan had started noticing something strange. Camille was calling home less often. Many times when he called her, she did not answer. When he asked about it, she explained that her employer had been very busy recently and there was a lot more work to do. Her explanation left Nathan uneasy. Was she really that busy? Busy enough to ignore his calls so often? Even late at night, he sometimes could not reach her. Nathan felt worried and unsettled, but he chose to stay silent. He still trusted his wife. Whenever she did call home, she sounded completely normal, and she was still sending money regularly. If she had another man, things would be different. At least that was what his past experience told him. Thinking that way, Nathan smiled to himself. He trusted Camille completely. From that point on, he stopped questioning her and never complained about her absence again. A few months later, Nathan was shocked once again. The amount of money Camille sent home kept increasing. What had once been $1,200 became $1,800, then $2,200. At that point, Nathan could no longer ignore how unusual it seemed. No matter how naive he might be, he could tell something was not right. Plenty of people from their town worked in the city, but very few earned that kind of money. How could Camille's salary be increasing so quickly? Troubled by the situation, Nathan talked to some of the women in the neighborhood. They all told him the same thing. There was no way someone working in a clothing store could earn that much money. If Camille was bringing home that kind of income, she had to be doing something else on the side. Nathan listened and admitted that their reasoning made sense. But if Camille really had another source of income, why had she never told him? Whenever he asked, she insisted that her employer had simply continued giving her raises. Before long, word spread throughout the neighborhood. People began talking about Camille and the money she was sending home. Soon the gossip turned ugly. Some people claimed she must be selling her body. Others said she was repeating the same mistakes she had made years ago, finding wealthy men and living off them. They insisted there was no way a store employee could earn that much money, honestly. Hearing people talk about his wife that way hurt Nathan deeply. Although he still trusted her, Doubt slowly began creeping into his heart. He knew Camille had a troubled past. She had once betrayed him and left him for a richer man. Yet for some reason, this time he wanted to believe she had changed. Eventually, the rumors reached Laura as well. As soon as she heard them, she spoke to Nathan. "You've heard what people have been saying about Camille, haven't you?" Nathan sighed. "Mom, they're just rumors. People love talking." "Maybe they are rumors," Laura replied. "But we're the people closest to this situation. We should at least think carefully about whether there's any truth behind them. Rumors don't always appear for no reason. Tell me honestly, have you ever heard of someone working in a clothing store and making more than $2,000 a month?" Nathan lowered his head. Once again, Laura's words forced him to face something he had been trying to ignore. This time, there really might be something wrong. After his conversation with Laura, Nathan could not stop thinking about Camille. Night after night, he lay awake, staring into the darkness. He kept asking himself the same question. Had Camille really gone back to her old ways? Had she truly changed, or had he simply wanted to believe she had? He could not find an answer. There were moments when he regretted letting her go to the city. If he had known things would become like this, he never would have agreed. Now they had a son together. They had rebuilt their family after so much pain. If Camille betrayed him again, what would happen to their child? What would happen to their family? Would everything fall apart once more? The thought terrified him. More than anything, Nathan realized he was not strong enough to endure that kind of heartbreak a second time. For days, he wrestled with those fears. He wanted to trust Camille, but the doubts in his mind kept growing. The rumors, the missed phone calls, the sudden increases in income. None of it made sense anymore. Finally, after many sleepless nights, Nathan made up his mind. He gathered all his courage and decided to travel to the city himself. He wanted to see the truth with his own eyes. He needed to know whether Camille was really working at her friend's store, as she claimed, or whether she was hiding something from him. Using the address Camille had given him before, Nathan quickly found his way to her friend's clothing store. But when he arrived, neither Camille nor her friend was there. He asked around and learned from the new owner that Camille and her friend had sold the store and moved away more than a year earlier. Nathan stood frozen. The owner's words hit him like a bolt of lightning. After leaving the store, he remained standing on the sidewalk. His expression changed as he stared at the crowds moving through the busy city streets. His eyes began to sting. The city was enormous. How could he possibly find his wife? Where had she gone? What was she doing now? Why had she never told him about selling the store and moving? If she was no longer working there, then what had she been doing all this time? Nathan could not answer any of those questions. His thoughts spun wildly. As he watched people walking past, he noticed a young couple holding hands. The sight immediately made him think of Camille. A chill ran through his body. His chest tightened. His heart pounded heavily. His lips trembled as he whispered, "Camille, did you really leave me and our son again?" His knees nearly gave way beneath him. Somehow he managed to stay standing. After taking several deep breaths, he slowly regained control of himself. The shock and fear quickly turned into anger. His face tightened. He pulled out his phone and called Camille. "Hello? Where are you?" Nathan demanded. "I'm home." "What's wrong? Is something wrong with the family?" "Stop lying to me," Nathan shouted before hanging up. On the other end of the line, Camille immediately understood that Nathan had come to the city looking for her. She knew she could no longer hide the truth. A short time later, she sent him her actual address and asked him to come meet her. When Nathan arrived at the address Camille had sent him, she finally told him the truth. A few months after moving to the city and working at her friend's clothing store, business at the original location began slowing down. Her friend decided to rent a new storefront and also open a jewelry shop at a separate location. Because she did not trust strangers, she did not want to hire additional employees. Instead, she put Camille in charge of the clothing store while she personally managed the jewelry business. Camille proved to be a capable manager. She sold a lot of merchandise and attracted many customers. Seeing that, her friend offered her a new arrangement. Every month, after deducting costs and keeping 20% of the profit, the rest would belong to Camille. The more she sold, the more she earned. Camille appreciated her friend's generosity and worked extremely hard. She had an attractive appearance and was good at talking to people, so customers liked buying from her. As a result, she sold a great deal of merchandise. After expenses and her friends' share were deducted, she usually earned between $2,000 and $3,000 a month, depending on sales. Nathan stared at her in surprise. But when he looked at her carefully, he realized her explanation made sense. Camille had always been attractive, confident, and skilled at communicating with people. While they were talking, customers continued coming in and out of the store. Several times, Camille had to stop their conversation to help customers. Watching her work, Nathan felt sorry for her. "Isn't it exhausting handling the whole store by yourself?" he asked. Camille smiled tiredly. "It is. Some days I don't finish until 9 or 10 at night. By the time I clean up, shower, and get ready for bed, it's almost midnight. That's why I often miss your calls and don't have much time to call home. Working this hard by yourself, I'm worried about you." "You don't need to worry," Camille replied. "Or is it that you still don't trust me? People back home have been saying things about me, haven't they?" Nathan looked at his wife with warm eyes and smiled. "You silly woman. Selling clothes is honest work. Why would I doubt you? I don't care what other people say. I know who you are and I know what you're worried about. But you don't need to worry. I've always trusted you. If I didn't, I never would have taken you back. The day you came back to me was the day I chose to trust you again. Let people talk if they want. Not everyone with a bad past is destined to have a bad future. People can learn, change, and become better. Look at me. I wasn't exactly a good example in the past either. As long as we keep trying to improve ourselves, things will get better." Camille lowered her head onto Nathan's shoulder and quietly cried. She never expected the gentle man she had once hurt so deeply would one day speak with such wisdom and understanding. Time, hardship, and painful mistakes had changed him. They had made him stronger and more mature. Nathan stayed with Camille until late afternoon before preparing to leave. As they said goodbye, Camille noticed that he still looked worried. She smiled and tried to reassure him. "Don't worry. Your wife isn't going to be fooled again. Go home and take care of our son. I'll stay here and keep working. Once we've paid off all our debts and saved enough money, I'll come home and open a store of my own. Then our family won't have to live apart anymore." Hearing those words filled Nathan with mixed emotions. He loved his wife and wished he could do more to help her, but there was little he could do. All he could offer was his trust. He boarded the bus and began the journey home. Sitting by the window, he watched the crowded streets and the endless flow of people moving through the city. He understood that a place like this was full of temptations, but he believed Camille would overcome them. She had already fallen once in her life. This time she would stand up stronger than before. About 2 years later, Nathan and Camille had completely paid off the debt they owed Daniel and Angela. Daniel officially transferred ownership of the land to them. By then, Camille had saved up a modest amount of money. She left her job in the city and returned home to open a small clothing store. Business went well, and the family's financial situation improved significantly. Nathan and Camille were eventually able to build a spacious 2-story house. Although Camille no longer earned as much money as she had in the city, both she and Nathan were happier than ever because they were together again and no longer had to live apart. Seeing her children living happily brought Laura immense joy. On the anniversary of her husband's passing, she stood before his photograph and clasped her hands in prayer. Tears filled her eyes as she looked at the man she had shared her life with. At last, her children had found their way back to one another. She silently prayed that from that day forward, they would continue to live peaceful and happy lives together. A child is still a mother's child, no matter how grown they become. No matter how foolish or reckless they may be, a mother cannot simply abandon them. Every mother hopes to raise children who are kind, responsible, and understanding, but no child is ever perfect. As a mother, even when her children are fully grown, she still feels a responsibility to guide them. At Laura's age, she should have been enjoying a peaceful and happy life. But when a child loses their way, a mother feels compelled to help them find the right path again, no matter how old they are. Fortunately, Nathan eventually found his way back. He learned to appreciate the people who truly cared about him and, most importantly, his mother. He undoubtedly came to understand one of the most important values a child can learn: honoring and caring for their parents. Because as long as your parents are still with you, you still have everything. They are the most precious treasure a son or daughter can ever have.